Scott?
Yeah, let me start with a couple of things that I think she did absolutely right or that are improving for her. First of all, the podium presence is really good. I didn't think much of her public speaking before, but since she's gotten into this race, she's only been behind a podium, and she did that well tonight. So from a plausibility perspective, what you expect to see out of a president, she absolutely did
It
that.
is a sea change
Yeah.
from what she was in 2020.
It's a lot. Well, even what she has been during the Biden years, she's not been that steady on her feet. But behind the podium, off a prompter, in a big speech, she obviously can do it. That's number one. Number two, as an image matter, she looks young, she looks coherent, she seemed calm. So she's the anti-Biden, right? I mean, that's what was the problem with the Democratic campaign. He was none of those three things, and now she puts that on. Now, the Republican pushback, and I think there's some truth to this, is that some of this is just substanceless pablum, that there's really no specificity in it, and that they ultimately think they are going to be able to fire her as the incumbent. And I think that's the question that we're really going to be answering over the next couple of months. How far can she run away from Joe Biden to prevent the Republicans from portraying her as the incumbent and then firing her as the incumbent? The country is off on the wrong track. People believe it. They still have economic anxiety. Can she shake off those vibes and replace them with this sort of esoteric unity vibe that they've been portraying at the convention?
But I think when you said that last night, you were on very solid ground. I don't think today you're on solid ground. This was substantive all night long. The policy on immigration, policy on foreign policy, policy on gun violence, on climate, on the care economy. This was not all sizzle. This was sizzle plus real steak. And by the way, I think we both have to say, the way she dealt with Israel and the way she dealt with Gaza, tough in defense of Israel, but also compassionate to the Palestinians. There's sizzle and there's steak tonight.
Agree with you on Israel. I thought that paragraph was good. The issue you didn't list in your bullets, the economy and inflation, I still think at the end of the day, the people are so upset with Biden and Harris on the economy. If the Republicans tie her to it, all of the other stuff falls away because it's the most important issue.
Let's check in with Caitlin Collins on the floor. Caitlin?
All right, guys. Let's get to the recap of the DNC convention and Kamala Harris' speech tonight. First off, credit where it's due. Kamala Harris has certainly improved her podium presence. She's polished, confident, and appears younger and more energetic compared to the often shaky Joe Biden. This is a stark contrast that the Democrats desperately need, given the widespread concerns about Biden's age and cognitive sharpness. Kamala came off as calm, coherent, and in control during her recent speeches, which is a significant upgrade from the 2020 performance and her time as vice president. The Democrats are clearly trying to rebrand her as the anti-Biden, a dynamic, capable leader who can steer the ship. However, we must be cautious not to get swept up in style over substance. While Harris presented herself well, a closer examination reveals that much of her rhetoric lacks real depth. Republicans are right to highlight this. Yes, she spoke on issues like immigration, foreign policy, gun violence, and climate change. But if you strip away the shizzle, there's not much steak left on the plate. The proposals were often vague, and the specific either recycled old ideas that have failed before or were entirely absent. This is where the conservative critics lend solidly. Substance matters more than style, especially when it comes to leading a country in turmoil. The biggest point of contention, though, I can say, is the economy. Despite Harris' attempt to pivot away from the Biden's administration track record, the reality is that she's been a central figure in an administration that has overseen skyrocketing inflation, rising costs, and economic anxiety that's crushing American families. Republicans should hammer this point home because it's the Achilles heel of the Biden Harris administration. No matter how eloquent Harris speaks or how youthful she appears, she cannot escape the fact that the economics policies she's endorsed have left Americans worse off. Moreover, while her stance on Israel and Gaza might have struck a balanced tone, this doesn't compensate for the broader failures, and the economy remains the top issue for voters. And the Biden Harris administration has fumbled it, to be honest and to be clear. This is where a Republican can and should focus their fire at. They need to remind voters that Kamala Harris is not just a fresh face, she's the vice president of an administration that many believes has put the country on the wrong track. So, to conclude on this topic, while Harris's new image might help her in the short term, Republicans have a powerful argument in tying her to Biden's economic failures. Voters care about what impacts their daily lives, and right now, that's the economy. The GOP needs to keep the pressure on this issue because in the end, all the sizzle in the world won't matter if people can't afford to put food on the table.
Candidate, in a speech like this, she talked about maintaining the strongest and most lethal fighting force in the world, and went on to say, about never disparaging their sacrifices. Obviously, reference to the many reports about what Donald Trump has said.
Yeah,
but just even talking about the lethality of our fighting forces is language you don't normally hear.
Right. No, this was a very muscular speech, and look, the whole hallmark of the Trump candidacy, when you lay it bare, is he's strong. He's strong, and that was the advantage he had over Joe Biden. She showed strength on that stage tonight, and I think that she has cut his advantage there. She looked like a president on that stage. I also wanted to mention Audie's point was so important. To me, having done this for a while, biography is really, really important because it's the way in which people take the measure of whether they can believe what you're saying. And the way she told the story of her own life and her own choices gives people some confidence that the commitments she's making are genuine commitments. And then the last point I wanted, Scott, your point about Biden and the strategy of the Republicans, which I understand it to be reasonable strategy, to try and saddle her with some of the negatives that Biden has. It is really interesting how little she mentioned Joe Biden in this speech. In certain ways, this was her declaration of independence.
I agree with that.
And she became her own person in this speech. And I've told you before, we'll see how this turns out. I think you're going to have a hard time saddling her in the way that you guys are hopeful that you can.
Well, she still flies around on Air Force Two. I mean, but that's the race, and it's going to take place in a truncated period of time. Can she get away from him, or can Donald Trump and his campaign apparatus drive home the point that there's no blank slate here, that this is a person who's been right next to Joe Biden executing on the policies that you say have driven you crazy over the last 4 years? And there's really just a simple question for Trump to ask. If you're upset about the direction of the country, maybe you don't put the people in charge who are already in the White House. I don't know who's going to win that race, but to me, between now and the debate on September 10th, that is the argument that's going to be had between these two juggernaut campaigns.
I think that Kamala Harris has done something. She's not just going to get away from Biden, which I think that she can do now, penalty-free. She has this party behind her, but she's doing something. She's fixing some problems on the left. This whole thing has been an implicit critique of problems that we've had on the left. The left before we walked in here was about justice, diversity, trigger warnings, reparations for the past, and a bunch of party poopers and scolds. That was the knock on the left. We have gone from talking about justice, which is wonderful, but now it's about freedom. It's not just about diversity, it's about patriotism. It's not just about trigger warnings. In fact, that's gone. It's tough, tough, tough. Reparations for the past? No. Fight for the future. Party poopers? No. We legalize fun. We legalize fun. We put the party back in the Democratic Party. And so this is a remolding of the genetic makeup of what the progressive movement is. These guys want to fight not just Biden in the past, they want to fight this sort of anti-woke war against a left that just died in here and something new just got born. The Kamala Harris Democrats are a different thing for you guys to fight.
I'm not sure the left is going to go down as easy as you think, but I agree with your chart, and I did want to pick up on one word that you wrote, and that's patriotism.
Yes, sir.
I do think that Republicans should pay attention to what happened in this hall tonight and the power of patriotism. It is a powerful thing. I made a snarky quip about it earlier, but what I was noticing was the American flags, the number of them, everybody had one. Towards the end of the speech, they had large American flags. There is something very symbolic about a waving American flag, the red, white, and blue, especially when you consider what we've seen out of the left on the streets of America and on the campuses of America over the last several months. You didn't really pick that up in the hall, but there is something interesting about it, and it was powerful.
I want to quick.
One of the most noticeable aspects of the Democratic Convention was the prominent waving of the American flag. Now, this is something we typically associate with Republicans' event, but it stood out here, and I think it was intentional. Given recent events where it's protests in the street or college campuses where different flags, sometimes even anti-American ones, have been waved, this suddenly display a new look, a new feel, like a calculated move by the Democrats to distance themselves from the more radical element within their coalition. This was a clear attempt to rebuke those who have openly criticized or even rejected American symbols, trying to reclaim the image of patriotism that has traditionally been a Republican stronghold. But here's the thing, waving the American flag at the convention is one thing, but how does that square with the action and rhetoric we've seen from their side over the last few years? Actions speak louder than words. And many within the Democratic ranks have been anything but supportive of the American value or symbol. Republicans need to highlight this contrast. While Democrats may have to wave the flag when it's convenient, their actions in supporting or tolerating anti-American sentiment on the streets and campuses tell a different story. This attempt to rebrand themselves as patriotic at the convention won't erase the deep division within their party or the fact that some of their most vocal members have embraced anti-patriotic rhetoric. So, while the flag waving might appeal to some, it's important to remind voters that true patriotism isn't just about optics. It's about consistently supporting the values and principles that the flag represents. And that's something Republicans have always done, not just when it's politically convenient. Thanks for tuning in. We just packed the Democrats' shift under Kamala Harris, her new spin on patriotism and what it means for America. But the real question is, does this vision truly lead us forward? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let's get the conversation going. If you enjoyed this discussion, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more content, and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Your supports help us keep this critical conversation alive. Thank you.